This is a very common question which is asked again and again. Why you want to join the US Army? Why don't you want to follow everything US Army puts forth in front of you? My answer to that is I would love to follow every policy, every laws and regulations made by the military. What about the laws and regulations which my faith gave me way before I joined the military? My name is Captain Tejdeep Ratan, and I am a dentist in the US Army.
It doesn't take very long to do my turban. So this is when I take my time, so it comes out nice. So that kind of contains my hair. I make sure it's nice and groomed or tucked in. Then I take one part of my turban and I start tying it up. But guess what? It doesn't take me more than 2 minutes to do my turban.
My family, we all immigrated here in 1996. And that's when everything started for me, my life here in the US. And when I joined college, I was really interested in doing different things. I wanted to join the Air Force, which is ROTC program at Wright State University. I applied first time when I was in my bachelor's degree, and that was quite a long process I went through. It was not a very pleasant one the first time, and they said you need to stick by the policies which says clearly that you cannot have facial hair and you cannot have a headgear. I took no at the time, but I didn't take no as an answer. After my bachelor's in engineering, I pursued my master's in engineering, and I went back to ROTC. I'm like, hey, I'm really interested still. They said, well, you can't do it. Eventually, I decided to become a dentist. I don't know how that happened. I went to NYU, and there came the recruiters. They said, hey, we need dentists. However, at the back of my mind, I still had a question about what's going to happen when I go for my basic training. Because there hasn't been a Sikh in the last 30 plus years who's been through the boot camp. I started looking for any other Sikhs who were in the same boat as I was, and I found out Kamal Kelsey. So we were connected through a common friend, and that's when we started talking about now what.
My name is Major Kamaljit Singh Kelsey, EMS Director at a large medical system here in New Jersey. But when I deploy, I do all sorts of things for the Army. I'm a doctor, I'm a soldier, I'm whatever they need me to be. I remember one time in Afghanistan when there was a mass casualty call, and so we all run to the ER. We all get to our stations, triage the patients as they come. One of those patients was a young Marine, and his name was Joe. Yeah, he suffered some blast injuries, got him stabilized, and then as he was leaving, he sort of grabbed my hand and said, "Thank you, brother." And that got me all choked up because this is proof of concept, right? Like my Marine brother here doesn't care that I have a turban or a beard. He just wants to know that I'll do a damn good job fixing him up, which we did. I would say I first met Captain Ratan in maybe 2004 or 2005. He's very passionate about service. And I remember while going through the accommodation process, he would get frustrated. You know, at times he'd just get very, very angry. The process of the accommodation was lengthy and arduous. It took us the better part of a year and a half of paperwork, moving up the chain of command. I mean, it was an amicable process. My superiors said that, look, we'll put in a letter of support. You just have to keep moving up the chain of command.
I received a call one day from an individual at one of our training centers who said, hey, we're looking to see if there's a way we could provide an exception to policy to allow Sikhs to join the military. Not knowing a whole lot about Sikhs at the time, I said, this is nuts. I said, are you crazy? You know, we don't do this for any other religious belief. This is not gonna fly. I went down to Fort Jackson and I met this young man, Captain Calsey, who was just entering the force, as I recall at the time. And I not only met him, but sat down, had lunch with him, and just talked about his religious beliefs, but more importantly, talked about what he wanted to contribute to the United States. And after meeting with him, and the impression he left was such that I said, wow, this may be one of those exceptions to policies that we need to make.
Captain Rutten was the first one to go to boot camp. I was the first guy to get the accommodation. Corporal Lamba was the first enlisted guy.
My name is Simran Lamba, and I'm a corporal in the United States Army right now. MAVNI program was the program which was introduced to hire or recruit certain legal immigrants from different parts of the world. While I was looking at the program, MAVNI, for the whole 2009, Sikh Coalition was always in the news because they were fighting the battle for Major Calsey and Captain Rutten. So I always knew that Sikh Coalition would be the key to joining the military. They really looked at my case and said that this could be really crucial and this could be really, helpful for the whole community if we help you, in your fight.
The Sikh Coalition has spearheaded this movement, and then one of the nation's largest law firms, McDermott, Will & Emery, decided to help us out as well. I mean, it was 15,000 petitioners, nearly $1 million worth of lobbying efforts in D.C. It took a congressional letter from 50 congressmen to Secretary of Defense Gates. It was a very, very big effort just to get one guy in.
Historically, Sikhs have been able to serve in the U.S. military with their articles of faith, with their turbans and beards, without any issues. In fact, we've had Sikhs serve in world wars and other global conflicts. The struggle here is not unlike the one that we know the African American community went through several decades ago to integrate into the U.S. military. The same arguments against allowing practicing Sikhs to serve are interestingly similar to those that were given to why Black soldiers couldn't serve. There were issues of uniformity. There were issues of esprit de corps or camaraderie. And we were able to overcome those because it was the right thing to do.
The Beckett Fund and its relationship with the Sikh Coalition goes back to our founding years, over 20 years ago. And we've been consistently engaging with the Sikh community, with the Sikh Coalition ever since. Speaking on Capitol Hill, providing a briefing, to help educate service members, to help educate particularly congressional staff about the intersection between federal law and federal constitutional rights and the desire for Sikh Americans to be a part of the military.
The letter that I spearheaded in support of the Sikh community is a letter calling upon the military, our U.S. military, to allow Sikh Americans who want to serve their country in our military, be it the Navy, the Air Force, the Army, the Marines, etc., be given the opportunity to do that and not at the same time have to give up their religious freedom or their religious garb.
And I believe it's time that we let all Sikhs serve in our United States Armed Services. Please give them a great round of applause for a service to our great nation. Thank you, Major.
When I see a people who want to be fully integrated into the American system, who want to serve their country, who want to serve in the military, and are denied that ability because they cannot give up their religious garb to do it. That's the line that has to be crossed. And it's been demonstrated that it can be done successfully.
I rise today as a proud co-sponsor of House Resolution 785, condemning the hate crimes, bullying, and brutal violence perpetrated against Sikh Americans and all.
The Sikh Congressional Caucus has taken the advice of the Sikh Coalition very seriously with regard to our advocacy on Sikhs in the military. And so we have signed on to letters of advocacy urging the Department of Defense to accommodate the Sikh religion. We like to point out that other countries have been able to accommodate Sikhs in the military, such as Canada, of course India, and Great Britain, and Sikhs have been able to perform well without any problems.
January 22nd, 2014, the Department of Defense released new guidelines regarding religious accommodations in the military. For the first time since the 1980s, the guidelines actually specifically allow for accommodations for religious grooming and appearance practices, including hair, which is a great step forward, but the concern remains for our community is a couple of different things. Number one, the accommodation requests have to still go up to the secretary of that military's branch. Number two, while the accommodation request is pending, the soldier or the interested recruit is required to abide by military policies. So this is a catch-22, that's how we describe it. I mean, you can't violate your religious practice while you're waiting for a religious accommodation.
You know, there's some resistance from a safety perspective to having Sikh men serve with beards. There's a concern that a seal cannot be made.
People are thinking that having a beard, will prevent me, from sealing the gas mask. So they were worried about my well-being, and I totally understand that.
I love hearing the story of Captain Ratan because he was so determined during basic training when that particular test came about that he wasn't not only going to pass the test, but he was going to be the last soldier to leave the gas chamber.
All right, right next to you to red base. When you're told to do something, you don't strap the mask.
We had to go through the gas chamber.
Take the mask off your head.
There was a gentleman who served in the Special Forces. He told me, just wet your beard a little bit, and that thing just seals very nicely. So I quietly went in there, put my gas mask on. I stayed inside the gas chamber for as much time they wanted me to stay. And then the drill sergeant asked me to come. He said, take your mask off. I did. So I stayed in the chamber for longer than anybody else, and I came out and I felt so good. I said, okay, maybe some minds have changed. Everybody was outside, they were clapping, because they were all my friends.
Okay, who goes first? Okay. What's that?
That's for not winning.
Okay, let's make another box.
I win!
You didn't win. If my little brother or my son wanted to go in, or my daughter, they should just be able to show up at the recruiting station and say, hey, I want to serve my country, and they should be presumptively included. They shouldn't have to go through, some crazy accommodation process at the end of which they may or may not be accepted. And that's sort of where we are right now.
One of the really important things I think to remember here is that the Sikh service members aren't going out and demanding their rights and pounding on the table and saying, military, you have to do exactly what we want you to do. They've gone out of their way to accommodate themselves to the military mission. All they're asking is the military take the small steps necessary to accommodate its mission to them.
Most recently, in 2014, I was very inspired and encouraged by the Pentagon's celebration of Vaisakhi. The Pentagon, through the Chaplain's Corps, worked with the 3 currently serving Sikh soldiers to host an event to celebrate a very significant Sikh holiday. And to be at that particular celebration really touched me personally because there was an intangible step forward.
Major Kulsi, who was promoted to major, I was promoted from specialist to a corporal. I have got various awards. Captain Ratan has got various medals and awards. Same thing with Major Kulsi, he won a Bronze Star medal after he came back from deployment from Afghanistan.
If you cut me, I bleed red, white, and blue. You know, my favorite holiday is July 4th. I get teary-eyed when I hear the national anthem. But I'm not special. Sikh Americans are all very patriotic people. You know, that's who we are.
To be a good Sikh is actually to be a good American, to be a citizen who believes in liberty, who believes in the rights of others, who will defend those rights to their last breath, that enjoys diversity, that thinks that the human spirit has limitless potential and everyone should have the right to realize their full potential.
I'm a living example of somebody who's living the American dream. I aspired something in the past and I'm living that life. I want to thank the policymakers who have given me that permission. However, on the same token, I would also request them, I would plead them to make some of these policies permanent for any of the younger generation Sikhs. I made some more friends, I met some friends. One of my soldiers, Pew, a nice guy, he was a medic. Hopefully some of these policies will be changed for the betterment of the Sikh community so they can rise and shine. They're not going to have any sort of problems, you know, serving their country and be a part of this fabric. Pursued my master's in engineering and I went back to ROTC. I'm like, hey, I'm really interested still. They said, well, you can't do it. Eventually I decided to become a dentist. I don't know how that happened. I went to NYU and there came the recruiters. They said, hey, we need dentists. However, at the back of my mind, I still had a question about what's going to happen when I go for my basic training. Because there hasn't been a Sikh in the last 30 plus years who's been through the boot camp. I started looking for any other Sikhs who were in the same boat as I was. Every policy, every laws and regulations made by the military. What about the laws and regulations which my faith gave me way before I joined the military? My name is Captain Tejdeep Ratan, and I am a dentist in the U.S. Army.
Usually doesn't take very long to do my turban. So this is when I take my time, so it comes out nice. So that kind of contains my hair. I make sure it's nice and groomed or tucked in. Then I take one part of my turban and I start tying it up. But guess what? It doesn't take me more than 2 minutes to do my turban.
My family, we all immigrated here in 1996, and this is a very common question which is asked again and again. Why you want to join the US Army? Why don't you want to follow everything US Army puts forth in front of you? My answer to that is I would love to follow. That's when everything started for me, my life here in US. And when I joined college, I was really interested in doing different things. I wanted to join the Air Force, which is ROTC program at Wright State University. I applied first time when I was in my bachelor's degree, and that was quite a long process I went through. It was not a very pleasant one the first time, and they said you need to stick by the policies which says clearly that you cannot have facial hair and you cannot have a headgear. I took no at the time, but I didn't take no as an answer. After my bachelor's in engineering, I